the Market Match website next week. So if you find this content valuable, you want to go back and take a look at. I'll tell you what. When you find this content valuable, you want to go back and look at it again. You want to share it with some of your staff or some of your team. That would be a great place to do it. It will be at marketmatch.com. Just a really quick overview on Market Match, just to let you know that we do know what we're talking about when it comes to branding. Market Match is a a marketing consulting firm, and we are solely dedicated to the community bank and credit union market space. We've been in business for about 15 years. Again, like I said, we only work with community banks and credit unions. And here's just a really quick map of some of the places that we've worked, doing everything from branding projects like this all the way down to just basic projects, helping people to increase their loans or to increase their checking accounts, or even just be the entire marketing department like we are with several of our clients today. But enough about me. Let's talk about branding. Today's session will cover a lot, actually. We're going to talk about the art and the science of branding. One of the things that I love about being here at Market Match and doing what we do as marketing consultants is that we get to do so many high-level, really cool projects so often in our career. And you'll see as we get into this, most of us here on the line today will be lucky to go through one, maybe two rebranding projects or initiatives in our entire career. But here at Market Match, you'll see that just in the last year, we've just completed 3. So we get to do it all the time, and it's exciting, it's fun, and it gives us an opportunity to really get to know our clients intimately, and you'll see how much information that needs to get gathered here in a minute. And that's really the second bullet, is the insights. So many folks think about branding as just a logo or just a tagline or the colors, and that's really, to me, the least important part of the brand overall. The brand is an experience, and we need to craft that experience based on knowledge of what's going on in your marketplace. And we will talk very in-depthly about how to get information from your customers or your members, and how to look at the competition, and how to find out what's going on in the community. And then finally, we'll take all that information and we'll turn it into ideas. We'll talk about things as basic as, do we need to change our name? And then ultimately, after we've made the investment in money and in time and put together our brand foundation, we need to launch it. And we'll show some examples of items that we've used recently to help launch a brand both internally and externally. But first, why go through the effort? Why rebrand? And I would assume that if you're taking the time out of your Friday afternoon, and hopefully it is beautiful where you are as it is here in Ohio, if you're taking, you're interested in branding. It's maybe something that's on your short list of things to do. Maybe it's on a list of maybe 2016, 2017 type initiatives. Each one of the examples I'm about to show you had different reasons for thinking about rebranding and for picking up that phone and for calling us to help them. Maybe your growth has been stagnant. Maybe you're plateauing and you need something to jumpstart the growth, or to give your customers or your members another reason to come see you. In one case, it was a situation where the atmosphere, the experience was simply stale, and that really came out in the research that we did. That maybe you just need to give your in-branch, your frontline experience a shot in the arm, and the only way to really do that, other than the old stick and carrot routine of giving them benefits or firing those who don't perform, is to really understand who you are as an institution, and we're going to talk a lot about that. Maybe you've outgrown your brand, and there's an example here of that exact situation. Maybe you're a bit outdated. There could be a million reasons why you would want to undergo a branding project, but the key item is that sometimes rebranding is simply like putting your bank or your credit union onto a therapist's couch. Sometimes you just need to find who you are. And that's exactly what a rebrand is going to do for you. It's going to help you identify what the community thinks about you. It's going to help you identify what your staff thinks are your strengths and your weaknesses. And it'll help you to have a consistent story from branch to branch, from interaction to interaction, through all of your customer and member touch points. And that's really, if nothing else comes out of this time we spent together this afternoon, that's one thing I hope you get. This is not a project. This is not, there's not a start, but there's not an end. It's understanding who you are, and it's taking steps to help you define to your customers and to your prospective members who you are. So as we go through the branding process, I'm going to be bringing in examples from 3 brand initiatives that we've recently completed our portion of, or in the process of completing our portion of, and then handing the brand back over to their brand ambassadors to run down the rest of the field and continue the story. The 3 cases are Central Florida Postal Credit Union. A little bit of background on Central Florida. Central Florida Postal Credit Union was originally started, much like the name says, for postal workers in the Orlando area. Most of their branches are located inside of their core segs, which are post offices. They really only have one standalone branch, and the rest of their branches are inside of post offices. So it's a bit like a needle in a haystack to find it, unless you're actually walking into the post office to buy some stamps or to mail something. Cortland Banks is a community bank in northern Ohio. Cortland Banks has been around for just over 100 years, and they've got a great history in their marketplace, but they have grown significantly. Oh, well, I guess let me go back to Central Florida Postal. Central Florida, not only do they have branches in their segs, but they have since gone community charter, and they're no longer completely dependent on the postal service. Important point that we're going to get to. Back to Cortland Banks. I'm so sorry. Cortland Banks, they were started in a city called Cortland, a small town in northern Ohio. They are now in 4 counties with a really big footprint. They hadn't really relooked at their brand in a long time, and it kind of looked like they were about 100 years old. And then finally, Central Macomb Community Credit Union in Michigan. They were originally started for a local military base that's in Macomb County, and central Macomb County, of course. And they have since expanded beyond Macomb County to 9 counties in the area, and they've also gone beyond just the military base. So those are the kind of quick backgrounds on those, and we'll get into each one a little bit deeper, but you'll see examples from all 3 of these branding initiatives as we move forward throughout the presentation. My goal is that you'll be able to learn something from these 3 recent brands. Really quick, one more background. The 2 credit unions, Central Macomb and Central Florida, their brands have launched. Central Florida's brand, they're no longer Central Florida, but their brand launched end of last year. And Central Macomb just launched earlier this year, and Cortland Banks is in the process and should be launching in the 4th quarter of this year. So just going to give you some quick ideas of timelines and where all these things sit. So the art and the science of branding, we're going to talk about, and even though all 3 of those clients, some are banks, some are credit unions, they're in 3 different states, they've got 3 different demographics in their marketplaces. They each came to us for different reasons to brand. But each one of those projects, each one of those initiatives all followed a similar process, because the branding process itself doesn't change. And so I wanted to talk through really fast about what the branding process is. Now, when it comes to a brand, we all on the line today have a brand. Whether you're actively cultivating it or not, your institution has a brand. Your institution has a perception, has something that your customers and your marketplace think about you, whether it's true or not. Matter of fact, I'd go even further and to say that each of us on the line as individuals, Chris and Deborah and Ed and Amanda, and everybody else on the line, we all have our own personal brand. Matter of fact, I've been talking to you now for maybe 5-10 minutes. You probably have some sort of a perception of me already, which is starting to form in your mind what my brand is. Or if you've read my blogs, or if you're aware of Market Match, all of these things put together start to form what your opinion of me is. Just like with your customers, they see your branches, they interact with your staff, they see your marketing pieces, and all of that starts to form the same type of opinion. And it all starts in this image that I have on the screen right now. So we'll go through that image just so you can see the pieces, but before we get too far in, the idea of this diagram that's on your screen right now is that we want to make sure that there's alignment. When our customers and when our staff, when our management team and the community are all aligned, that's when our brand's going to be strong. And that's why you'll notice that there's so much research that we put into each and every brand initiative, just to make sure that we're understanding and aligning our customer base, our staff, our management, our communities. So getting back into the diagram, so many people think of the brand, like I said, as the website, as that outer ring, the website, the service, the advertising, the products. But we really can't get to this outer ring until we focus here at the core and start to build a strong foundation. What we want to start to do is start to understand, and I'm going to just touch on mission and values and vision, because I know a lot of the names here that are already on the webinar, many of you are seasoned marketers or seasoned business folks, and you know that a mission is simply what do we do and who do we do it for. And as long as our mission statement covers those 2 points very specifically and very succinctly, then we've got a good, strong mission statement. Our values are really how we act when nobody's looking. It's how do we make decisions when we're in an ALM meeting, when we're in a boardroom. What is it that that drives us, and will help to get to that point. And then finally, the vision is where we want to be moving down the road. Where are we going? Where do we want the Bank of the Credit Union to be next year, 5 years, 10 years down the road? And if we know those 3 things, that is really a strong foundation for us to start to put a brand together. Because just like every other, just like a regular advertising piece or a piece of digital media or what have you, everything has to start with an objective. And we'll start to be able to form what that objective should be when we understand who we are, when we understand why we do what we do, and we understand where we're going. The real goal here is to get to our brand essence, and that is our central overriding meaning. What is the one thought, the one thing that we want people to walk away with when it comes to our brand? Essentially, the brand essence is your soul. You know, who are you? Are you the class clown? Are you most likely to succeed? What is your essence? And I give some good examples of that. Probably the 3 best examples of it that I can think of from a marketing standpoint are Volvo, Disney, and Harley Davidson. Volvo. I give presentations like this all over the country to credit unions, community banks, and associations. And whenever I mention Volvo in a group, everybody says safety. With Disney, different words may pop up, but it really all comes back to magic. And with Harley Davidson, it's all about the freedom. It's about the wind in your face, the bugs in your teeth, and getting out there and riding. So those are, that's what we're trying to get to with our institutions, and that's what we're trying to get to with this particular project. Now, FreeStar is the new Central Macomb Credit Union. We renamed them FreeStar, and we'll get to some of the reasons why we renamed in a minute. But when we understand who we are, why we do what we do, and where we're going, then we can start to put together tenets. And tenets are really it's how you live your life. Every major religion has tenets, the 10 Commandments. When I was in martial arts, before they would teach us even how to stand or punch or anything, we had to agree to and live by and abide by a set of tenets. And if we can't, and really when we're at work, The tenets are how we live our life from 9 to 5. It's how our employees do what they do. And when we understand our brand, when we start to build that foundation of our brand, we'll have tenets that we can share with our staff. And you'll see a highlighted section of this. This is actually straight from FreeStar's brand guidelines. But the brand story that we tell, it's a narrative. And because we have so many different target audiences, whether you're talking to a 20-something female or a 65-year-old African-American man, or a millennial, Gen Xer, or a boomer, whoever you're talking to, no matter what their socioeconomic background is, we may have a different story to tell about our credit union or our bank. But when we have these set of tenets, we can craft the story to each individual as long as they follow what's true about us. Now, these tenets, they talk about our history. This particular member, FreeStar, was based in a military history. I talked about what we do in the community. It talks about what our promises are. And those promises are the same, but we may fulfill those promises different from target to target. And so when you have sound tenets, your 10 commandments, if you will, you're able to know how you need to live your life, and you're able to know how you need to tell your story. And then we can just craft that story to what's important to each person that we're telling that story to, if that makes sense. Now, we created a brand story for Priority too. Priority Credit Union is the old Central Florida Postal Credit Union. We changed their name as well. So now there's 2 of the 3 examples I've shown you where we actually went through a name change, and we'll talk about why we chose to do that here in a few minutes. But with Priority, again, like I said, they have a very unique marketplace. They were founded from the Postal Service. They've got even after they went community charter, they found that they tended to bring in more blue collar workers. Their staff spoke that language, lived that life. They matched up, they aligned with their audience. So the story for Priority was that we're created for, we cater to, we're dedicated to dedicated individuals. These are folks who have been relied on by their family, they've been relied on by their community. But you'll see that we have our tenet, our base that we go above and beyond, but the individual targets are different. It may be somebody who's dedicated to their family. It may be somebody who's dedicated to their friends or their community, or somebody who's dedicated to work. And these are all personas, profiles that we learned from doing our research and from talking to the staff. And now we know, you can see from this one page that as we do our marketing, as we do our messaging, our look, we know who we're talking to. And you really can't tell a good story until you know who your audience is. So this is how we start to put the brand story together. Their tagline that came out of this was for those who deliver. Obviously, it played back to people delivering the mail, but also delivering in your communities, and delivering for your families, and delivering at work, no matter your career, whether in the post office or not. Now that we've understood the essence and the mission and the value and everything, now we get to work out to the outside circle, our personality, our positioning, our attributes. Now, it's important to note when we're talking about our brand positioning, the 2 things we really want to keep in mind are our competition and what's relevant to our customer base. And you'll see where we want to be is in the top right-hand quadrant of this graph. We need to make sure that there's something that we fill a niche in the marketplace that isn't already currently being filled, if at all possible. And then we also need to make sure that we are as relevant as possible to our prospects and to our customers. So essentially, we need to meet our target's needs, we need to differentiate, and as emotional as we can make it, the more, and as authentic as we can make it, then the more people will care and the more people will listen to it. When we talk about our personality, a well-executed brand is going to have human traits to it. And again, a brand is going to evoke emotion. If you think about some of the brands that you're loyal to, whether it's you're the driver in your golf bag, or the purse that's slung over the back of your chair right now, the car you're driving. We purchase those items based on emotion, and the brand is what starts that. So what are the human traits that really embody your bank or your credit union? What enables your customers to build a relationship with you so that you're not just another commodity, you're not just another free checking in the neighborhood? Well, you start to do that by describing yourself like a person. And the research that we do, and we'll get into the research in a bit, helps us to identify, and this is a story that we told about one of the branding projects that of our case studies. And this is, you can see, it's a personality. We identified their demographic. How old are they? What is their economic class? Are they technologically savvy or not? Are they professional? Are they laid back? We've done some of these where, even for banks and credit unions, where they're not wearing suits, where they may be wearing shorts, or they may occasionally wear funny T-shirts. Depends on what your level of professionalism, what your style is. And it's important to understand, because when you understand that, then you can have a smarter, more intelligent discussion, very tactically, about maybe even what your staff wear. And I know that we've all had those discussions in the boardroom. Should they wear logo apparel? Should they wear ties? Once you understand the personality of your institution, it helps you to make decisions like that. And even such tactical, minute decisions as what the staff wears fall from your brand like this. Are you fun? Are you the life of the party? Are you a loner? Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Do people trust you? What do your neighbors think of you? Are you always joking and laughing? This particular brand, it really all boiled down to, they were down to earth. It's the type of neighbor you want to have. And hopefully you can see where, when you're able to tell this kind of story about yourself, then you've got a voice for your marketing. So you've got a voice for your staff. You can hire based on, if I have 2 or 3 candidates for a job position, which one of those 2 or 3 candidates fit this mold the best? And don't fool yourself. Disney does this. If you've ever been to a Disney park, it amazes me that Disney is able to bring in employees from around the world, literally from around the world. They're young. Many of them are in college or just out of college. But and these are the same types of things that we look at as excuses for why we can't staff a good teller line. But Disney takes those, and they're able to take people in college, just out of college, from all different backgrounds and cultures and languages, and they're able to turn them into the greatest service providers in the world. And it's because it starts with staffing. It starts at their they don't have staff. They've got oh my gosh, English has just lost me in a second. That is the first language. They're cast. You don't go to staffing, you go to casting. You're not an employee, you're a cast member. And it all comes down to having a persona like this that you can tell about yourself. So that's a lot of great information. Okay, Eric, fantastic. How do I tell this story about myself to make it relevant to my members, my customers, my community? How do I make it relevant to my staff? Well, we really can't do any of that until we start to build a knowledge base. And when you start to think about what type of information you need, you think about what is your brand DNA. We need to learn about the market itself. We need to learn about our competition, and we need to learn about ourselves and our personalities and our capabilities. And where all of that overlaps, that's your brand. And so we'll talk about ways to find that information here in just a minute. Before I go too much further, because this is a very short time frame to cover a whole lot of information, last week we wrote a blog, the 25 questions to answer before you rebrand. And I thought that blog article was very relevant for this session. So I would encourage you to go to marketmatch.com, check out our blog, and look at the 25 questions to answer before you rebrand. And it'll be, and what I'm going to cover right now is how you answer those 25 questions, the type of tools that you can use to answer those 25 questions. Now, when it comes to your competition, we we do shops, and I'll explain how we do our shop process in here in just a minute. We also look at, we review the messaging of each one of our competitors. We review their locations. When it comes to talking to the marketplace, our customers or our prospects, we do a lot of phone surveys. We do focus groups occasionally when it makes sense. We never want to, we always have to be budget conscious. We would love to have all the information in the world, but our budget is only goes so far, right? So we want to make sure that once we understand our objective, what we're trying to get to from our brand, and we understand where the knowledge gaps are, then we start to fill that in with things like shops and phone surveys and focus groups, and investing what needs to be invested to make sure that we're doing the job the right way, but we don't want to overspend for the sake of, well, we don't want to do research for the sake of research. We want to make sure that we're getting the information that we need to be able to answer those 25 questions that you'll see in that blog. We talk to internal stakeholders. What does that mean? That means that we sit down with key, your staff leaders. And by leader, I don't mean title. By leader, I mean those who have their finger on the pulse of what's going on at your institution. Those who other employees look to, good or bad. We all know that we've got staff members that may be a cancer on the organization. That people emulate negative things as well as positive. We want to make sure that we're talking to the folks who have their finger on the pulse and who other employees look to. We talk to board members, we talk to management, we talk to key commercial clients, we talk to key retail clients to make sure that we understand what their perceptions of our strengths and our weaknesses are. And then we also know the community, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But when it comes down to it, we really can't build that wow experience for our brand unless we know what the audience wants and we are it all the time. And that's what all of this research is really meant to do. Now, when we're doing our shops, when Market Match does shops, we walk into institutions and we talk about checking accounts. And the reason we talk about checking accounts is several-fold. One, checking is often a product that people will come in as their first product with the institution. Checking also is a gateway to so many other products. I've had experiences where we've done shops talking about checking accounts, and I end up doing most of our conversation with the MSR or with the CSR, customer service rep, and member service rep, talking about auto loans. You can tie checking, if done right, into all different kinds of cross-sells, into all different kinds of smart conversations. So that's why we walk in that way. We walk in and we're in character. We usually come in jeans, dressed kind of nice but casual, like anybody would coming into your branches. If there's a receptionist, you walk to the receptionist. If there's not, you go to the teller line. You act like anybody would, Joe or Susie Public walking in off the street, what they would do. And our shops start from the very moment we see your sign, from the very moment we see your bank, your credit union in our car. And we take a look at what does the institution look like? Does it look like some place that I want to deposit money or borrow money from? Do I feel safe? Is it inviting? Is it clean? Is there trash out in the parking lot? Is it easy to get in and out? Do I see the sign? There's been times where I've driven by an institution 3 or 4 times. Google Maps swears up and down it's there, so I take it at its word, and it takes me a little bit to see the sign, to even find it. That has to be a part of the experience. I've had institutions that have been fantastic branches, but they're impossible to get in and out of. That's part of the experience. So it all finds its way into branch image. The next thing we do is we look at greeting. How fast are we acknowledged? How sincerely are we acknowledged? When we talk to new accounts folks, do they shake our hands? Do they try and build a rapport? Is eye contact? Are they, we've all been in the McDonald's where, these high school kids who are taking their order, we don't even know the color of their eyes because they never look up from their cash register. We want to make sure that we don't have that experience at the branches. We want to make sure that we're warm and welcoming, and we try and establish a rapport, and we're polite. We're treating people like a guest in our home. And then finally, when it comes to, those are all service criteria. Those are all things that help us to understand, to have a good experience, to feel warm and fuzzy about the institution. We also look at sales criteria. Things like, do we ask qualifying questions? Things like, where do you bank now, or how do you bank? Is it electronic? Do you like to come into the branch? Do you do everything on your phone? And we can't make those assumptions just based on their age. We've got to actually ask questions. So qualifying questions are those questions that once an individual has shown interest in the product, how do we narrow the conversation? What questions do we ask to have a more intelligent conversation with that person across our desk or across the teller line? And then we also talk about, we look at how the product is presented. Do they just hand us a brochure and that's it? Or do they talk about the benefits? Do they tell us that they use the product and why they love it? Those types of things are important when it comes to product presentation. With cross-sell, again, it's not just the checking account, but do they talk about debit card, online banking? That you can, once you have a checking account with us, you can pay your loans right there through online banking. So if you've got loans, it makes sense to get those with us. The last piece is the close. You'll be shocked, appalled, disgusted at of the hundreds and hundreds of bank and credit union branches I've walked into, how many actually ask me for the business, and it's almost zero. It is single-digit percentages of people that once a warm body is in their branch, they are interested in the product, they've shown they've shown interest, they haven't walked out, and the people don't say, can I open this product for you today? Let's get this thing started. For some reason, our staff are just afraid to ask that question, and they shouldn't be. And we take all that information, we mix it together, and it comes out to would we buy? That's the final. These are all on a 1 to 10 scale. Once we have all that information, and we recommend that the same person do the shops in the market so that what I consider a 2, somebody else may consider a 3, and we're able to compare them to the other shops that we've done in the market. But once we have that information on a 1 to 10 scale, we take a look at all of your branches and take average scores. We take a look at all of your competition's branches on an aggregate and take a look at average scores. And then we look at the key competition in your marketplace. In this case, it was the top 5 market share competitors in the marketplace. And then you can see now that we can begin to strategically decide where our biggest problems are based on how we compare service and sales-wise with the folks that we've shopped. And you can see that this particular client had issues across the board. They had friendly people, that was about it. So they needed and when we talk about branding, even though we may have changed their name, even though we may have changed their logo, all that was irrelevant if we couldn't change the branch experience. And that was one thing that these shops really hit hard with us, is that the investment needed to be in what we do in the branches, even more than what we're communicating to prospects or to the community. We also take a look at mapping. We take a look at your products. You can see that this is checking accounts, for example. Where do you have your checking accounts? What markets are your hot spots? What where do your balances reside? And we would look at this for checking, CD, loans. And once we understand where all your hot spots are against where your branches are and where your average balance is, then we can lay that over top of where your competitors are and start to look at a realistic, how many of your competitors do your best customers or do your best communities, your best neighborhoods have to drive by to get to you? And which customers are they? And from the shops, how do those competitors compare with the type of service that you offer? What are the messages of those key competitors? So you can see where it's important to understand where your money's coming from, where the competition is, and see those as barriers, because every time they've got to pass one of your competitors, it's like a hurdler jumping over an obstacle on their way to the finish line. Now, that's the shops, that's the mapping. We also talked about staff interviews. And we get a lot of information from staff interviews, but one of the best things, and then as far as what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, these are closed-door meetings, one-on-one, with no other management present. We do the interviews blind so that the staff are comfortable telling us. We want to know the bad and we want to know the good. And we don't want to just have everything rosy, sunshiny, rainbows, and butterflies. We know it's not always the case. So we want to make sure the staff tell us the truth. And so we do find out some skeletons in closets. We have been able to uncover where there's been some issues between communication with management and staff, which affects the brand because it affects their personality, it affects the work environment of the frontline staff. But in the case of Priority, the staff was also able to tell us that Priority was a situation where we didn't have a budget to do phone surveys. We just didn't. So we used the staff knowledge. And in talking with the staff, we were able to put together personas of their customer base that we would have typically pulled out of quantitative information through phone surveys. But I'm leaving this up here for a long while. I'm telling the story for a reason. I'm hoping you're reading this. There were two different kinds of members that Priority staff identified. And from talking to enough staff members and putting together the pieces that were consistent, we were able to build a great persona of who their older, long-term members were. And these are folks that are retired, usually postal workers, because remember they're core. These are folks who have other people dependent on them. That's where we started to get the for those who deliver tagline. That's where we were able to start building the brand story of the mom who never misses soccer games, the friend who always helps people move. Often divorced, they've got grandkids, they're simple, not simple-minded, but not living way beyond their means. We know that they're used to wearing uniforms, but now they're being comfortable. They're in t-shirt and jeans. We get an idea of how far away they live, what kind of cars they drive, what they talk about to the staff about when they come in. This is all important stuff because now we know that when we build a brand, they need to be able to talk to this person. Does that make sense? So it wasn't just the older members. Priority, and you might have the same situation, there were really two camps, and they were about 50-50, 60-40 maybe. But there were the newer members, and those are the folks who came in after the community charter. And those credit unions on the line, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, their newer members, they were younger. They were more electronic focused, so we call them point and click instead of the stamp licking. They're putting in a lot of hours at work because they're still working. They're blue collar. They've typically got their names on their shirts. They change jobs every so often. One of the big things I thought was really, really interesting is, and this came across all of the branches and almost everybody we spoke to, these are folks who are living beyond their means. They want a BMW because they've always dreamed of having a BMW, even if that means that BMW is 10 years old and may have a little rust on it. But that logo is really, that logo is fantastic, and I'm proud of it. I love my car, and I've achieved one of my goals by having a BMW. Now you'll see how that contrasts, remember, with our simple older members who live more simple. We're talking about why they came to us. Why do they use us? And once we understand all of that, and we can even have a picture of what that individual looks like, again, like I said, we can start to craft our brands, have our target audience, and know who we're telling our story to. Now, like I said, with Priority, we didn't have a budget for phone surveys. With other clients, we typically do, and we recommend the phone surveys because the more quantitative data we have, the smarter our decisions on branding will be. And what I like to say, the rule of thumb with research is you keep asking the question until you start to get consistency. If I can ask 10 people and all 10 people give me the same answer, there's no reason for me to go to 700 or 800 individuals. It means it's probably true. But what we're trying to do is get a confidence level that can extend to your entire marketplace, to all of your customers. And that's what, it took us 377 customers, 383 non-customers for a client that had 4 counties with a big footprint to be able to get a 95% confidence level, meaning that I am 95% sure that what this study tells me is going to be true against anybody in any of my counties. And that's all we're really trying to get to. So if it takes a phone survey to do that, we definitely recommend it. For those millennials on the line, this red thing here, this is what phones used to look like before we had cell phones, but I digress. Hopefully there were a couple of giggles. Oh my gosh, I actually lost one attendee. See, that's the last time I told a bad joke. I'm done with that. Anyway, phone surveys. The type of things that we learn when we're talking about phone surveys are customer awareness. One of the things we look at is customer awareness. The very first question we ask on all of our phone surveys, regardless, now our questions are different from client to client, from initiative to initiative, but the first question is always the same, and it's completely blind. What are the first 3 financial institutions that come to mind? And you'll see that, you know, and I've kind of blurred out or taken out the data to protect my clients' information a bit, but you can start to tell who thinks of us first, who thinks of us second, who thinks of us at all, and you can start to see who's named. What are the competition people that are thought? I've actually had this question where we say, who are the first 3 financial institutions that come to mind, and your own customers don't name you in the top 3. Or you've got competitors who are ahead of you in overall mentions. And that's a scary situation, and that does tell us something from a branding standpoint. We also look at non-customers. It's important to talk to the community at large to see who they think of. And where in this line do I fall, does my institution fall, and how people think of us from a top-of-mind standpoint. And we also look at the counties. One of the other questions that we ask is, who's your primary financial institution? Who do you think of as your main bank or credit union? And we can take a look at that through all of the individual counties and see where my competitors are in each county. And when I'm selecting a PFI, why do I select them? Don't we want to know why people come to us in the first place? Is it because of locations or relationships? And is it different between my customers and my non-customers? You'll notice in this instance, customers had a higher weight to location and relationship, where non-customers put a higher weight on rates and fees or service. So again, it tells us something about who our individuals are that walk into our branches every day, and who are the folks that we want and what they think about when they make buying decisions. And then, you know, also, you know, what are your perceptions of us? Of those individuals who do know you, do they have a positive, a negative, or a neutral thought about you? And you can see this from a customer and from a non-customer standpoint. And then it'll tell us, to a certain extent, do we have a clean board? Do people just not know who we are? You'll see that this is a really big chunk of neutral here. Do we have a negative problem? Do we have some hurdles that we need to overcome and that the brand needs to speak to? And we've had all of that. So you're really only going to know that type of information if you do phone surveys, if you do quantitative information. So we know what we want to do. We have our brand foundation, our process, our mission, our vision, our personality. We identify all of those traits from our research, whether it's phone surveys, whether it's focus groups, whether it's branch intercepts, what have you. I do have a question here from Paula. Yes, you won't be emailed the presentation. If you email me individually, I'd be happy to send you an edited down version. But these presentations, because they're so graphic heavy, are really, really big from a size standpoint. We can take some images out. I'll take some of the client research out, Paula. But if you email me after the session, I'll be happy to send you the basics of the slides. And again, as a reminder, these will be recorded as well. So thank you for your question there. Again, if anyone else has questions, please put it in the bar. Okay, so we have all of our information. Now, what do we do with it? Well, some of you on the line may have come here thinking about name changes. And a lot of people, when you think about a rebrand, you think about a name change. It is an important part of it outside of the experience itself. Now, what's interesting is we've been doing branding for a long, long time. We've done a lot of initiatives. Regardless of the 3 samples I'm showing you today, most of the time we don't recommend a name change. In the case of Central Florida, we changed them to priority. In the case of Central Macomb, we changed them to FreeStar. In the case of Cortland Banks, we did not change the name, or we just had a small edit to it. But how do you know? Well, the rule of thumb that we live by here at Market Match, and that we would recommend that you consider as well, is you only change your name if the name provides a barrier to growth, some sort of false limitations. Florida Postal Credit Union. Well, I can only come to you if I'm a postal worker. We had a situation like that with a credit union called Education Credit Union. Clearly, and they were community. So oftentimes it is when you're very credit unions, when you're very seg focused, your core sponsor group, and you've gone community charter. With community banks, it's usually geographic. Is the brand outside of your control? Delta, State Farm, Michigan State Credit Union, Chevron, all companies, right? They're also the names of credit unions. If Delta was to have several planes go down in tragedies, to have bad service, to have a situation where planes were left on a tarmac for hours and hours and had bad PR issues as a company, Delta Community Credit Union would be tied to that, even though they have no control over that brand. So in that case, it may be worth thinking about a name change. And is there a negative perception in the marketplace? Sometimes tied to something like credit unions where you've got other companies, but is there a negative perception? In that case, it might be worth considering. But if you think about the last 5, actually almost 10 years in our industry, there's been so much consolidation that a name change brings additional baggage with it from a perception standpoint. What we don't want people to think is that we got acquired, right? And so anytime we do a name change, we need to be very careful in our communications and in our launch to make sure people know that we have not been acquired. Now, in the cases of our studies that we showed you, again, Central Florida Postal Credit Union, and we're still in Central Florida, so there wasn't necessarily a geographic issue, but we needed to let people know that we weren't just postal anymore. So we went with Priority Credit Union. A priority being a tie to priority mail, priority being also how we treat our members, regardless of who is walking in off the street. Cortland Banks is an interesting situation. Cortland is a small town, like I said, in northern Ohio. They grew outside their geographic boundaries enormously. But when we did, and they completely expected us when they hired us for us to want to change their name. We recommended that they not, because we found through the research that there was no negative perception of Cortland being a small town, that they weren't considered a mom and pop bank because they were tied to a small community. People thought Cortland became just sort of like Huntington, where it was a word, but it wasn't necessarily tied to anything specific. So there was no need for us to change their name. The S was confusing the customers, so we did go ahead and change that. And Central Macomb, again, we had the issue there with the geographic issue, the county. We changed them to FreeStar because the free tying into the freedom of the military, the star, of course, also tying into patriotism, but also the freedom that we're going to provide anybody who walks in off the street, the financial freedom that we're going to be able to offer them. So, we worked into to names that way. So once you decide you are or are not going to change your name, there are a couple rules. If you decide you are going to change your name, make sure that you evolve, but you don't walk away from your heritage. So oftentimes we see institutions that pick a name, a random, even made-up word sometimes, but they have no nod to the folks who built them. And the customers and the members who walk in your branches every single day, they'll feel disenfranchised if you completely ignore the background. So we always want to have some nod to our heritage while we're still able to, and some touch with our core base, while we're still able to talk to the community at large, while we're still able to have something that we can aspire into, that we can grow into. And again, we also want to make sure that it aligns with our personality and all of those brand foundation elements that we talked about early in the presentation. And we've already talked about how we did that with Priority and with FreeStar. Now, when we're doing logos, we want to make sure that we're getting your market's feedback from that as well. In the case of Cortland, we went through, gosh, probably 50, 60, 75 different logos before we landed on 7 that we all agreed that we liked. But we wanted the customer base to have a say. So this is actually a page from our testing, which is higher res. This is coming through kind of weird on the screen, but where we took the logos out to the marketplace. We took them to key customers, to key commercial customers as well. We did branch intercepts where there wasn't even an investment in this; it was free. We went with a clipboard into the branches for a couple of days and just pulled customers aside as they were going to the teller line. You can do email surveys to make sure that you're capturing those folks who prefer to see you electronically. And just ask them a couple questions. What colors speak to you? Which icon speaks to you? Which fonts speak to you? What do they say? In the case of Cortland, we were trying to get across the brand of being more neighborly. So which one of these says that we're more neighborly? And once we have all that, and talk to the staff. We also went into all the branches and talked to the frontline staff and some of the back office staff. And once we have all that feedback, it shows us which logos speak to which audiences, and then what do we want to do from a weighting standpoint. If our commercial customers say that one logo speaks to them, but our retail customers say something else, then we've got some decisions to make from a management standpoint, a prioritization standpoint. See, when we did this, number 2 is where we went towards, but even at this point, the logo wasn't set in stone. There were still some color modifications that came out of the color discussions that we had with customers too. So this is the logo that we ended up with Cortland Banks after speaking to their customer base. And now we're more confident when we go to launch this in September or October that this is going to speak to the members because they already told us that this is something we like. Another important question to ask when you're doing your testing is which one do you like the least? It's important to identify that. And you'll notice if you remember Cortland's logo early on when I first showed it to you, it was very similar to this number 3. We put this in here on purpose, not because we like the logo, but we wanted to see if our customers would pick it as their favorite because it was familiar. Well, what we ended up finding was this was the least liked logo on the sheet. So that told us that doing the logo change actually strategically made sense. It spoke to the customers. The logo that was most similar to what they're used to was the least favorite among those that we pulled. And we also tested the taglines you could see at the bottom. All right, so with a couple minutes we've got left, we'll talk about taking this to market. So again, the idea of the brand is the experience, right? And so we want to make sure that we start with the staff. Having a good media buy is great. Making sure that we're going out with and talking to targeted audience in the marketplace. We don't need to make sure that our brand speaks to everyone in the market, but we do need to make sure it talks to our key segments. We're never going to get everybody to like us, and I'm fine with that, as long as we get those who we have strategically identified as the most important people. As long as we get them to like us, we're fine. And that all comes back to some of our objectives. These are sample objectives that have come from other branding projects. But as you outline your objectives, make sure that we've got some metrics to track against. Creating added value for existing customers, where we want to make sure that we're tracking services per household, some key balances, some attrition. Make sure that we can take this information, have a baseline of it on the day that we launched, and then go back 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, and be able to go back to these key metrics and see, okay, although the brand may not be our only marketing initiative over that time frame, it is certainly one of the major marketing initiatives over that time frame, and what kind of an impact did we see? Because one of the things that everybody on the line is going to ask about is ROI. And it's really, really hard to do ROI for a brand. But when you have your objectives and you have your metrics, that you can have a baseline and something you can measure against down the road, it helps us to better craft that ROI. Do our attrition rates fall? Does our acquisition increase? Do our balances, are they increasing at a faster rate than they were before the launch? Now you can start to make a financial decision on did the brand help us? that helps you to add to the bottom line. We also want to make sure that we roll out to the staff. The staff, to me, is more important than rolling out to the community, because we need to make sure that the staff are the executors of the brand. Remember, Disney is cast members, and Disney wouldn't be what it is if their staff wasn't as fantastic as they are. If you've ever been to Universal and Disney on the same trip, there is a distinct difference between the two theme parks, and we want to be the same type of way. With FreeStar, we made sure that we spelled out exactly what the brand process was. We wanted to make sure that we spelled out for them in presentations and in handouts what their role in all of this is. Branding isn't just the marketing department. It's not just the management team, but they all play, everybody, whether you're at the call center, you're in collections, you're in finance, everybody plays a role in the brand. The way we treat each other internally, when the doors are closed, before we open or after we close, that's part of our brand. So we need to make sure that everybody on the team understands their roles. We're all playing from the same playbook. FreeStar, we did something really cool that I would definitely recommend. We put together a metrics, a service brand metrics that identifies how each individual is in charge of delivering the brand, attaining what we want to become. Because again, a brand isn't just who we are, but it's what we want to be. How do we sustain the brand, and what everybody's roles are? So you can kind of see from this really quick document that this is the playbook. This is how everybody on the team understands where you fit in for the type of traits that we hire, or the type of traits that we promote and that we keep. How do we train that? How do we communicate that? And you'll notice at the top, everything is based in the mission and the vision and the culture, and make sure that everybody understands that. This isn't a one-time training. This is every quarter, every month, every staff meeting. We need to make sure that we're hammering home who we are, and that the meetings fit the personality that we've outlined, that we've identified for ourselves. Brand guidelines. These are the brand guidelines that we put together for a priority. Now, the brand guidelines are not just how do I use the logo or how do I not use the logo, but even the brand guidelines are steeped in the mission and the values and the brand promise. We want to make sure that the staff understand not only what do we look like and what are we going to wear, but also how we're going to act. And so that, again, it keeps going back. It's an ongoing theme when we're talking about staff training. We want to make sure we're putting tools in place for experience. I just pulled a couple from these 3 examples, but there are lots and lots and lots of tools that we use and that you're going to want to incorporate. One of the cool ones, so simple, but remember, priority service was subpar when we did our shops. So we put together just a really quick, how do we do today? And how did we deliver, going back to the tagline. And just did you make me feel like a priority, or was it a complete disaster? And we can take a look at this from a branch by branch standpoint and make people accountable. And one of the reasons we ask members for or customers for their feedback isn't just to learn what the customers think, but it's also to let the staff know that the customers are judging them, and help make them accountable for the service that they deliver. We put in note cards. FreeStar Central Macomb didn't have note cards handwritten note cards that they did. FreeStar does. Whenever we have a new account, a new loan, a new customer, we send them a handwritten note, and that's all part of the experience. We want to make sure that that we're asking the right questions and facilitating conversations at the front line. And with almost all of our branding projects, and this is an example, we put in a tool for the front line to use to make sure that we're asking those qualifying questions that we judged in the shops. Where do you bank today? How do you bank? Do you have are you expecting any need for a new car or a loan down the road? What did you like about your previous bank? All those types of things. And then communications with newsletters, both for the staff and for the customers or the members, to make sure we're communicating on a regular basis, and we want to make sure that we've got a look that ties through. And again, 45 minutes is tough to show everything, but these are just some examples of tools that you can use. We want to make sure all the branches are consistent. We'll make sure that these are situations where it was hard to tell that there was a credit union inside these locations. So we'll make sure that we put the product front and center, that we have the brand front and center here at Priority. We want to make sure we're launching out to the community. Obviously, there is a component, we can't get away from it, the marketing component. So how do we communicate that we weren't acquired, that this isn't a merger, that the same friendly faces with improved service, and using the name and the logo and the colors to give us a story to tell and to give people a reason to try us again, and to show them that there is a change, there's something new going on here, and you definitely want to check us out. And that's what the external communications can do for you. So once we've done all of the brand, we want to make sure that it's just brand needs to, the promises need to be long-term. So how do we make sure that we continue outside of the launch? Well, we want to make sure that all the processes that we define are trained not just once, but ongoing with all of our team. We want to make sure that it's part of the new employee inoculation, if you will. When new folks are starting on the team, we want to make sure that they understand the brand, that they get the brand manual, that they get the brand training documents. Again, train. If we're going to do branding right, we need to make sure that we're telling our staff on a regular basis. And we also need to do some awareness benchmarking and see how we've done. Again, that goes back to those metrics that we talked about earlier. Because really what it comes down to at the end of the day is branding is not a project. It is for us because we're in and out to get you started. But the brand itself needs ambassadors. It needs storytellers at your institution. There really isn't an end. It's an ongoing process. And if you're going to undertake a brand, you just understand that it's a new way of thinking, it's a new way of acting, it's a new way of living for you and all of your staff. Otherwise, all you're doing is changing a logo, and it might as well just be a marketing project. So it all comes down to that, and that's why we love doing what we do from a branding process. And hopefully, we've shown you how you can do some of this on your own. If you were to bring us in to help you out, we do have an ROI guarantee. I'd invite you to check that out on our website. But I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to help out. If you'd like to reach us, here's our contact information. I think I ran just a little bit long. It's 2:03, but I appreciate everybody being on the call this long. If there are any questions, I am here for you. I'll stay as long as you'd like. So if there are questions, you'd like to type them into the question bar, now would be a great time for that, and I'd be happy to answer them. Other than that, thank you very much for being part of the Mojo. Have a great rest of your Friday and a wonderful weekend, and hopefully you'll keep checking out our stuff on our Market Match blog and seeing what we have to offer and come back for more Mojos. So thank you very much, and I will stay online just a little bit longer to see if any questions come on. Okay, not seeing any. If you think of anything, please email me. But thank you everybody for attending, and have a great day.